The uninvited guest. It was a quiet night. The city outside was alive with distant car horns and streetlights flickering in the dark. Inside his small apartment, Ethan Carter was getting ready for bed. He was just another ordinary guy. Nothing special about him. His life was boring. He worked at a tech repair shop, ate frozen pizza for dinner, and watched sci-fi movies alone. Tonight was no different. He turned off the lights and slipped under the blanket. But just as he closed his eyes, he heard something move under his bed. It was a faint rustling sound, soft, like fabric shifting against wood. Ethan froze. His heart pounded. A rat. A stray cat. His mind raced with possibilities, but something about the sound felt wrong. He slowly turned on the bedside lamp, casting a dim yellow glow across the room. Then, gathering his courage, he leaned over the edge of the bed and peeked underneath. And that's when he saw her. A woman. A strange woman was lying under his bed, curled up as if she had been hiding there for hours. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, a soft silver light that was both beautiful and terrifying. Her skin shimmered slightly, as if dusted with tiny glowing particles. She wore a tight, metallic-looking suit that clung to her body, reflecting light in strange patterns. Her hair was long and pure white, but it wasn't the color that made it unusual. It moved, as if alive, floating slightly as if affected by invisible waves. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What the hell? He scrambled backward, nearly falling off the bed. The woman tilted her head and blinked at him. Then, calmly, she slid out from under the bed and sat up, stretching as if waking from a nap. Finally, "You noticed me," she said in a smooth, emotionless voice. Ethan grabbed the nearest thing he could, a half-empty soda can, and held it like a weapon. "Who the hell are you?" She observed him with mild curiosity, as if she was studying a new species. "I am Zyra. I am here to observe your species' mating rituals." Ethan blinked. "What?" She repeated the sentence, this time in a slightly slower tone, as if he was too stupid to understand. "I am here to study how humans choose partners. I will be staying with you for observation." Ethan stared at her, his brain struggling to process what she just said. Was this some kind of prank? Wait. This isn't funny. How did you even get in here? Are you from the government? Some weird experiment? Zara tilted her head. "I arrived through an interdimensional rift. Your species would call me an alien." Ethan let out a nervous laugh. "Right. An alien. Okay, great. Sure." Zara reached into her suit and pulled out a small, hovering device. It scanned Ethan from head to toe, making soft beeping sounds. She checked the device and nodded. "Your physiological responses indicate extreme confusion. Expected." Ethan swallowed. His hands were shaking. This woman, this thing, was completely calm, as if breaking into a stranger's apartment and hiding under their bed was normal. He slowly stood up, his mind screaming at him to run. "Okay, listen, lady. I don't know who you are or what kind of sci-fi nonsense this is, but you need to get out. Now." He pointed at the door. Zara didn't move. She simply observed him with her glowing silver eyes. "I cannot leave. The experiment has begun." Ethan took a deep breath. His whole body was shaking. This couldn't be real. This had to be a dream, right? Maybe he fell asleep watching a sci-fi movie. Maybe. Just then, something pounded against his front door. A deep, heavy knock. Ethan jumped. His heart slammed against his ribs. He looked at Zyra, but she was already standing alert, her glowing eyes narrowed. The knock came again. Louder. More forceful. Ethan's mouth went dry. Who the hell was at his door this late at night? Zyra spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Do not open it." Ethan hesitated. "Why? Who is it?" Boom. The door shook violently, as if someone was trying to break it down. Zyra's expression remained unreadable. But then she did something that made Ethan's blood run cold. She pulled out a weapon. It wasn't like any gun Ethan had ever seen. It was sleek, metallic, and hummed with blue energy. She turned to him, her glowing eyes flashing. "They found me." Ethan took a step back. Who? Who found you?" Before she could answer, the door exploded inward. A tall, muscular figure stepped inside, his black armored suit reflecting the dim light. His skin was an unnatural shade of dark blue, and his piercing red eyes locked onto Zira with cold precision. His voice was deep, emotionless, and terrifyingly calm. "Step aside, human. We need to talk." Ethan's mind screamed one thing. Run. The experiment begins. The room was filled with dust and smoke as the front door exploded inward. Ethan stumbled backward, his ears ringing. His apartment, which had been his quiet, boring sanctuary just moments ago, was now a war zone. Through the haze, he saw the intruder step inside. The figure was massive, at least 7 feet tall, wearing black armor that shimmered like liquid metal. His skin was a deep shade of dark blue, and his red eyes glowed faintly, cold and calculating. He looked like something straight out of a nightmare. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. The intruder's gaze flickered toward Zira, who was already standing in a defensive stance, gripping her energy weapon tightly. His voice was deep, too deep, like multiple frequencies speaking at once. "Step aside, human. This does not concern you." Ethan's throat went dry. He wasn't sure what was scarier, this giant armored alien standing in his apartment, or the fact that Zira didn't seem surprised at all. "Vrax." Zira's tone was calm but sharp. "You weren't supposed to find me this soon." "Vrax?" Ethan's mind was struggling to keep up. Vrax took another step forward, the ground vibrating under his weight. "You failed to report." That raised suspicions. His glowing red eyes turned toward Ethan. "And now you have compromised the mission." Ethan's brain snapped back into action. Compromised the mission. What the hell did that mean? "Whoa, whoa, whoa," he stammered, holding up his hands. "I don't know what's going on here, but I swear I didn't do anything. I don't even know her." Vrax ignored him and took another step toward Zira. Zira didn't flinch. Instead, she did something that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. She lowered her weapon. "You don't want to do this, Vrax." Vrax's red eyes flickered, his head tilting slightly, as if analyzing her words. "You are breaking protocol," he stated. "This is not how we conduct research." Ethan frowned. "Research?" Zira sighed. "Things have changed. I need more time." Vrax remained silent for a long moment. Then his armor shifted slightly, humming with energy. "You have 24 hours, he finally said. "After that, we extract the human and terminate all unnecessary variables." Ethan felt a sharp chill crawl down his spine. Extract. Terminate. Oh, hell no. But before he could protest, Vrax turned and walked out. Just like that. No fight. No further threats. The moment he was gone, Ethan let out the breath he didn't realize he was holding. He turned to Zira, his voice rising in panic. "Okay, what the hell was that?" Zira didn't answer immediately. She pressed a button on her wristband, and suddenly the broken door repaired itself, the debris reversing back into place, as if nothing had happened. Ethan's eyes widened. "Did you just undo the damage?" She ignored his question and instead fixed her glowing silver eyes on him. "Listen carefully, Ethan Carter. We don't have much time." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, still trying to process the fact that his name just came out of an alien's mouth. "How do you know my name?" "What do you mean? We don't have much time." Zira hesitated, then sighed. "Because I have been observing you for days." Ethan froze. "Days?" Zira nodded. "Your behavior is unusual for a human male. My research suggests that your species engages in specific patterns of attraction and courtship, but you do not. Ethan blinked. I'm sorry. What? Your species seeks connection, partnership, love, yet you isolate yourself. You have no mate, no deep companionship. Why? Zyra tilted her head, genuinely puzzled. Ethan felt his face heat up. Oh my God. You're stalking me for a dating experiment. Zyra didn't react. It is necessary for our survival. That shut him up. Ethan took a deep breath. Okay. You know what? Let's take a step back. You're saying that some giant alien government sent you to study how humans date each other. Zyra nodded. Correct. Ethan rubbed his temples. And if you fail this experiment? Zyra hesitated. Then she said, very quietly, they will erase all data, including the subjects. Ethan felt his stomach drop. Subjects? You mean me? She didn't answer. Ethan stared at her. Are you saying that if you fail this experiment, they'll kill me? Zyra's gaze remained unreadable. Not just you. All humans within my study parameters. Ethan went pale. How many? Zyra finally looked away. 7 million. The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. 7 million. 7 million people would die just because some alien scientists decided humans weren't worth studying. Just because their mating rituals weren't interesting enough. Ethan felt his legs grow weak. He collapsed onto the couch, gripping his head. This is insane. Zyra stepped closer, her expression unreadable. I need your cooperation. Ethan Carter. Ethan looked up at her, his mind spinning. Cooperate? With an alien? In some kind of intergalactic dating study that could decide the fate of millions of lives. This was the weirdest, most terrifying night of his life. And somehow, it was only getting started. The real agenda. Ethan sat frozen on his couch, his mind spinning out of control. 7 million people. 7 million lives depended on this so-called experiment that he had no idea he was a part of. How was this even real? Across from him, Zyra stood like a statue, her silver glowing eyes fixed on him. She had no emotions on her face, no concern, no guilt, just that calm, calculating look like he was a specimen in a lab. Ethan clenched his fists. You're telling me that if I don't cooperate with your little alien science project, your people will wipe out 7 million humans. Just like that. Zyra didn't blink. That is correct. Ethan let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Well, that's insane. Zyra tilted her head slightly, as if she were analyzing his reaction like a data point. From your perspective, perhaps. From mine, it is logical. Species that do not provide valuable data are eliminated. Ethan's blood ran cold. Eliminated. The way she said it, so casually, as if she were talking about throwing away useless garbage, made him feel sick. Ethan exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. Think, Ethan. Think. If they needed him to cooperate, that meant they weren't ready to wipe out humanity yet. He still had time. But how much? He glanced at Zyra. All right, let's assume I believe all of this. What exactly do you want from me? Zyra finally sat down across from him. She clasped her hands together, her silver nails catching the dim light. You are an anomaly. Ethan frowned. Excuse me? Zyra studied him carefully. Our research predicted that humans would instinctively seek companionship. They form emotional bonds, romantic partnerships, and mating pairs. But you do not. Ethan blinked. Are you seriously telling me that you're spying on my love life? Your lack of one is concerning. Zyra said matter-of-factly. If a species does not actively engage in its own reproductive cycles, it may indicate evolutionary stagnation. The Council believes humans may be. She hesitated for a moment, then continued. A failed species. Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, you're telling me that because I'm single, Your alien overlords think humanity is doomed. Zira nodded, completely serious. For a long moment, Ethan just stared at her, then buried his face in his hands. This is the dumbest apocalypse I've ever heard of. The hidden purpose of DGE experiment. Ethan looked up, exasperated. So what? You want me to go on a date? Fall in love? Prove that humans are still emotionally functional. Zira shook her head. It is not that simple. She reached into her metallic suit and pulled out a small transparent cube filled with swirling blue light. She held it up, and Ethan felt his skin tingle just looking at it. This is a neural imprint device, Zira explained. It records emotions at a molecular level. We need you to experience deep, authentic love so that I can extract the imprint and present it as evidence to the council. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You want me to fall in love on command? That's not how it works. Zira didn't seem fazed. You have 24 hours. Ethan's heart almost stopped. What? If the data is not gathered, Vrax will return. And this time, there will be no more discussions. Ethan shot up from the couch, pacing furiously. 24 hours? That's ridiculous. Do you have any idea how long it takes for humans to fall in love? It's not something you just flip the switch for. Zira blinked slowly. You misunderstand. You do not have to fall in love. You simply need to experience the emotions associated with it. Ethan's jaw clenched. And what happens if I fail? Zira didn't answer. She didn't have to. Ethan knew exactly what would happen. The real reason. Humans are being studied. Ethan took a deep breath. Okay, let's say I help you. Let's say I somehow produce this magical love emotion you need. What then? Your council just lets humanity live. Zira hesitated, and for the first time since he met her, Ethan saw something strange in her expression. Doubt. Ethan narrowed his eyes. You don't believe it, do you? Zira's silver eyes flickered slightly, but she didn't speak. Ethan took a step forward. Tell me the truth, Zira. Even if I do everything you want, will your people really leave us alone? Zira remained silent, and that silence told Ethan everything. The experiment was never about studying human love. It was about something else, something much worse. Ethan's voice dropped. They're planning to invade, aren't they? Zira finally met his gaze, and for the first time, her calm, emotionless mask cracked just a little. They already have. Ethan felt his blood turn to ice. The invasion had already begun. The Sealkik is Tishikeing. Ethan staggered back onto the couch, his mind reeling. Aliens were already here. Humanity was already being judged, and he had 24 hours to convince them that love, of all things, was worth sparing them for. He let out a shaky breath. So what do we do? Zira looked at him with something close to concern. We improvise. For the first time since this nightmare began, Ethan saw uncertainty in her silver eyes. He had no idea what the next 24 hours would bring. But one thing was certain. Failure was not an option. Escape or die. A dangerous truth. Ethan's mind refused to process what he had just heard. They already have. Zira's words echoed in his skull like a siren, a slow realization creeping through his veins like ice. The invasion had already begun. He took a step back, his legs feeling weak. His apartment, once his safe little world, now felt like a cage, a battlefield he never signed up for. How? He whispered, voice barely steady. If your people have already invaded, why haven't we noticed? Why haven't they attacked? Zira remained silent for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Then, in a quiet, measured tone, she said, because they don't need to. Ethan's stomach twisted. What do you mean? Zira's silver eyes locked onto his. Your people are already losing. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. They are integrating. Slowly, carefully. Our kind doesn't conquer with weapons, Ethan. We conquer from within. His pulse hammered in his ears. There are others like you, aren't there? Ethan realized, horror dawning on him. Others running the same experiment in different parts of the world. Zira nodded. Thousands of us. Ethan's legs nearly gave out. He gripped the edge of his couch, his mind screaming at him. Thousands. Thousands of aliens, living among humans, studying them, manipulating them, pushing them towards some invisible tipping point. And nobody even knew. Your kind is unaware, Zyra continued. You do not question. You do not resist. Ethan felt a deep, soul-crushing fear settle in his chest. He had spent his whole life thinking aliens would arrive in giant warships, lasers blasting, an obvious, visible war. But no, they were already here, and humanity was losing without even realizing they were fighting. The sudden attack. Before Ethan could even think of a response, a deep vibration shook the apartment. Zira snapped her head toward the door. Her entire body tensed. Ethan felt it too. A subtle shift in the air, a disturbance in the atmosphere. A second later, the lights flickered. Then, the entire wall exploded. Ethan barely had time to react before a pulse of pure energy ripped through the room. He was flung backward, crashing into the coffee table as debris rained around him. Through the smoke, he saw a tall, dark figure step into the apartment. Vrax. His black armor hummed with energy, his red eyes locked onto Zira with murderous precision. Experiment terminated. Zira barely had time to react before Vrax raised his hand and fired. A beam of crimson energy streaked toward her. Zira dodged at the last second, rolling across the floor and flipping behind the couch. The blast punched a hole straight through the wall. Ethan scrambled for cover, his ears ringing. "Oh, come on," he shouted. "What happened to 24 hours?" Vrax's voice was calm, emotionless. "The Council has decided. Humanity is no longer a viable species." Ethan's blood turned to ice. "What?" Vrax took a step forward. "Your species lacks the proper emotional responses required for long-term integration. There is no reason to continue the experiment." Ethan felt his stomach drop. Wait. Vrax wasn't just here to eliminate Zyra. He was here to wipe everything clean. Including Ethan. The escape plan. Ethan ducked just as another pulse blast vaporized his kitchen table. "Zyra, do something," he shouted. Zyra didn't hesitate. She reached into her suit and activated a hidden device on her wrist. Instantly, a glowing blue portal tore open in the middle of the room. "Move," she ordered, grabbing Ethan's arm and yanking him toward the portal. Vrax fired again. The energy blast barely missed them as Ethan and Zyra dived into the swirling vortex. For a split second, there was nothing but weightlessness. Then, they crashed onto solid ground. Ethan groaned, pushing himself up. His head was spinning. His vision was blurry. Where the hell were they? As the world around him came into focus, he realized. They weren't in his apartment anymore. They weren't even on Earth. The underground resistance. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he took in the scene around him. They were standing in a massive underground facility, filled with flashing control panels, strange-looking technology, and humans. Or at least, what looked like humans. Several figures stood nearby, watching them with wary eyes. Some looked completely normal. Others had strange glowing markings on their skin, mechanical enhancements or irises that shimmered with unnatural colors. A man with a scared face and cybernetic arms stepped forward. He eyed Ethan, then turned to Zyra. "You're late." Ethan whipped around to face Zyra. "You knew about this place." Zyra finally exhaled, her mask of cold logic slipping just a bit. "This is the only place where humanity still has a chance." Ethan's stomach twisted. "A chance? At what?" The scared man answered. "At fighting back." Ethan blinked. "You're saying there's a resistance?" The man nodded. "We've been preparing for years, But we need people like you. Ethan let out a sharp laugh. Like me? I'm just some guy. I fix laptops for a living. How the hell am I supposed to help with this? The man just smirked. Because you're the reason Zyra switched sides. Ethan turned to Zyra in shock. Wait. You. Zyra's silver eyes met his. And for the first time, he saw something different in them. Doubt. Uncertainty. Maybe even hope. Zyra took a deep breath and nodded. I was wrong about your species, Ethan. And if I can change, maybe others can too. Ethan exhaled. His entire life had flipped upside down. Less than 24 hours ago, he had been just a normal guy. Now, he was standing in an underground alien resistance base, being asked to help fight against an invisible invasion. He looked at the faces around him. The people who had been fighting this war in the shadows. The ones who hadn't given up. And then he looked at Zyra. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't over yet. Ethan squared his shoulders. All right, what's the plan? The final test. A new reality. Ethan still couldn't believe it. Less than a day ago, his biggest problem had been fixing a broken laptop at work. Now he was standing in a hidden underground base, surrounded by people who claimed they were part of a secret resistance against an alien invasion. How was this real? The air inside the facility was thick with tension. Dozens of people were staring at him, whispering, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. It didn't help that Zyra was standing right next to him, an alien, their former enemy. The large screen on the far wall flickered, displaying a live map of Earth. Small red dots were scattered across it, blinking like warning signs on a battlefield. Ethan pointed at the map. What am I looking at? The man with the cybernetic arm, Commander Reeve, stepped forward. Infiltration points. Each red marker represents a confirmed alien presence. Government offices, corporate headquarters, military bases. Reeve's eyes met Ethan's. They've already taken control of everything that matters. Ethan's stomach churned. You mean, we've already lost? Reeve exhaled. Not yet, but we're running out of time. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Okay, so what's the plan? You guys must have something, right? Reeve hesitated. Then he glanced at Zyra. That depends on her. Ethan turned to Zyra, confused. Wait, what? Zyra, for once, looked uncomfortable. There is something I have not told you. Ethan crossed his arms. Oh, fantastic. Another surprise. Go ahead, hit me with it. Zyra met his gaze. The Council never intended to simply study humans. The real goal was to determine whether Earth could be assimilated into the Dominion. Ethan frowned. Dominion? Zyra nodded. The Dominion controls thousands of worlds. Each species is tested, categorized, and either integrated into the Empire or eliminated. Ethan felt his skin go cold. So that mating experiment was just an excuse. Zyra nodded. It was the first phase. They wanted to see if humans could be controlled through emotions. If humans rely too much on emotions, they are seen as weak. If they lack emotions, they are seen as expendable. Reeve clenched his jaw. And what's the result? Zyra hesitated. Then, quietly, she said, The Council has decided. Humanity is a threat. They will not be allowed to exist. The room went completely silent. Ethan felt like the ground had just vanished beneath him. So what do we do? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Zyra exhaled. I need to prove them wrong. Ethan narrowed his eyes. How? Zyra lifted her hand, revealing the glowing cube she had shown him before. By giving them something they have never seen before. Ethan glanced at Reeve. And that is? Reeve smirked. A human who refuses to break. The final experiment begins. Zyra led Ethan to a separate chamber, a small circular room lined with alien technology. A floating platform stood in the center, pulsing with dim blue light. Ethan hesitated. What exactly are we doing? Zira activated a control panel. We need to force the council to watch. That means you need to experience the strongest human emotions possible. Ethan frowned. And how do I do that? Zira looked at him. By reliving your worst memories. Ethan blinked. Wait. What? Before he could protest, the platform lit up beneath him. A wave of invisible energy slammed into his skull. And the world shattered. Ethan's mind. A test of humanity. Ethan opened his eyes and realized. He was home. Not the underground base, not the ruined apartment. He was standing in his childhood home, a cozy little house with yellow walls and a kitchen that smelled like warm pancakes. He turned around and froze. There at the dining table sat his mother. She was smiling, just like he remembered. Alive. Ethan's breath hitched. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. He stepped forward, reaching out. And suddenly, the room shifted. The warmth vanished. His mother's smile faded. And then, she was gone. Ethan felt his chest tighten. No, not again. The room changed. Now he was standing in a hospital hallway, staring through a glass window at a hospital bed. His mother lay there, frail and unmoving, wires hooked to machines. The day she died. The moment that broke him. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block it out. But the pain was still there. The regret, the helplessness, the crushing loneliness. His fists clenched. This isn't real. This isn't real. But it felt real. And then another voice echoed in the air. You cannot fight this, Ethan Carter. Ethan's breath caught. He knew that voice. Slowly, he turned. And there stood Vrax. Except, this time, Vrax wasn't attacking. He simply stood there, watching, his red eyes glowing faintly. Analyzing. Studying. This is why your species is weak, Vrax said coldly. You drown in your emotions. You let your pain consume you. Ethan's jaw tightened. You don't understand. This isn't weakness. Vrax tilted his head. Is it not? The room flickered again. The hospital scene disappeared. Now, Ethan saw something different. Zira. She stood in the center of a battlefield, alone, surrounded by figures in heavy armor. Her own people. They were speaking to her in a language Ethan didn't understand. Their expressions were cold, disappointed. And then, they turned away from her. Ethan watched as Zira took a single step forward. But she was alone. Ethan's chest tightened. She had been cast out. Just like him. And in that moment, he understood something. She wasn't just studying him. She was trying to understand herself. The scene dissolved again. Ethan and Zira stood in the dark void, facing each other. Zira's silver eyes held something different now. Something human. Ethan took a deep breath. You wanted to know why humans fight for love, he said. Zira nodded. Ethan took her hand. Because it's the only thing that makes life worth fighting for. The decision. The world snapped back to reality. Ethan gasped, stepping off the platform. The resistance fighters were staring at him. Zira stepped forward, holding up the neural cube. It was no longer blue. It was glowing gold. She turned to Reeve. We have what we need. Reeve smirked. Then let's send the council a message they won't forget. Ethan exhaled. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Emperor's judgment. The final transmission. The underground base was buzzing with energy. Every monitor in the room flickered with live data as the resistance fighters worked frantically, their faces lit by the glow of holographic screens. Ethan stood beside Zira, both of them staring at the neural cube, now glowing a bright gold, pulsating with the raw essence of human emotion. This was it. The proof they needed. The only chance to stop the council from wiping out humanity. Commander Reeve turned to them, his cybernetic eye scanning the data. The transmission array is ready. Once we send this to the council, there's no turning back. Zira nodded. We must do this now. Before Vrax finds us. Ethan swallowed hard. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. But right now, his actions would determine the fate of Earth. Let's do it, he said. Zira placed the cube on the transmission console, her fingers gliding over the alien controls. The entire base dimmed for a second as the energy pulsed through the machinery. A low hum filled the air. Then, a holographic projection burst to life in front of them, and Ethan felt his breath catch. A figure towered before them, materializing in shimmering light. His presence alone made the air feel heavy, like the very atmosphere bent under his will. The Emperor of the Dominion. His form was humanoid, but impossibly tall, his skin shifting between metallic black and deep crimson, as if the fabric of space itself wrapped around him. His eyes were pure white, without pupils, burning with an eerie glow. His voice was not a sound, but a force, a pressure that echoed inside their very minds. Zira, you have betrayed your people. Zira stood firm. No, I have seen what the Dominion refuses to understand. Asterisk asterisk. She gestured toward the cube asterisk asterisk. I have gathered the data. You must see it for yourself. The Emperor didn't move. For a long moment, the room was deathly silent. Then, the cube floated into the air, rotating slowly as golden strands of energy swirled around it. The Emperor extended a single hand, and the cube dissolved into light. For the first time, Ethan felt something change. The Emperor was processing the emotions. He was experiencing humanity. Zira turned to Ethan. He is inside the memory matrix now. He will feel what you felt. Ethan clenched his fists. If this didn't work, if the Council still decided to wipe them out, there would be no second chance. They waited. Seconds passed, then minutes. Finally, the Emperor spoke. This is different. Ethan's heart pounded. Was this working? The Emperor's voice held no emotion, but there was something different about it. Your species fights for something beyond survival. Love, grief, sacrifice. You are unpredictable. You are irrational. Asterisk asterisk. He paused asterisk asterisk. You are dangerous. Ethan's stomach twisted. This wasn't working. The Council still saw them as a threat. He stepped forward, breaking every rule, ignoring every warning Zira had given him. Listen to me. His voice was shaking, but he forced himself to hold his ground. You think emotions make us weak, but they don't. They're the reason we keep going. The reason we don't just give up and let ourselves be controlled. Asterisk asterisk. He pointed at Zira asterisk asterisk. She saw it. Why can't you? The Emperor's glowing white eyes shifted toward Zira. You have abandoned logic. You have abandoned order. Zira straightened. I have found something greater. The Emperor's presence darkened. The air in the room grew colder. Then you have made your choice. And just like that, he raised his hand. A surge of raw energy exploded from his palm, aimed directly at Zira. She didn't move. Ethan's instincts took over. He didn't think. He just acted. He jumped in front of her. The energy collided into his chest. Pain. Raw, searing pain. His vision blurred. His body collapsed. His mind went dark. The turning point. Ethan felt nothing. He drifted in an endless void, weightless, lost. Was this death? Then, a voice. Faint, distant. Ethan. Soft hands on his face. Warmth. His eyes fluttered open. Zira was kneeling over him, her glowing silver eyes filled with something he had never seen before. Fear. Real, raw fear. You cannot die. Her voice was barely a whisper. Not now. Ethan exhaled shakily. That really hurt. Zira placed a hand over his wound, and a strange blue light pulsed from her palm. Ethan gasped as the pain faded. He wasn't dead. She had saved him. Zira turned back toward the Emperor. You see. Her voice rose, filled with something new, something powerful. He protected me. A human protected me. The Emperor remained silent. Then, slowly, he lowered his hand. For the first time, his voice was not cold. Fascinating. The entire chamber shuddered. The monitors blinked. The red markers on the invasion map vanished. Zira's eyes widened. You're calling them off. The Emperor didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked at Ethan. One anomaly can reshape an entire equation. You have disrupted the pattern. Ethan sat up slowly, wincing. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? The Emperor's form began to fade. We shall see. And just like that, he was gone. The aftermath. The room remained dead silent. Commander Reeve exhaled, rubbing his face. Well, that was terrifying. Zira helped Ethan to his feet. Her hands were shaking. Ethan gave her a half smile. Guess we made history, huh? She didn't smile back. Instead, she whispered, You should not have done that. Ethan shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time I made a dumb decision. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Then, Zira placed a hand over his heart. Thank you. And for the first time since this began, she smiled. Love or duty? The calm before the storm. Ethan sat on the edge of a metal platform, watching the city skyline from deep within the underground base. The war, if that's what this had been, was over. Or at least it seemed to be. The council had withdrawn. The red markers on the invasion map had disappeared. And yet, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't truly over. The world didn't know what had just happened. People were still going about their lives, unaware that their entire species had been on the edge of extinction. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his temples. It had all come down to one thing: emotion. The Dominion had seen love as a weakness, and yet it had been the only thing that saved them. Behind him, Zira approached. Ethan glanced over his shoulder. Did you really think this would work? Zira hesitated, then sat next to him. No, I believed we would fail. Her silver eyes reflected the distant city lights. But you changed everything. Ethan chuckled. I don't know how. I'm just a guy with a broken laptop. Zira's expression softened. You are more than that now. For the first time, Ethan saw something in her that wasn't just logic, wasn't just calculation. It was something human. And that scared him more than anything. A decision that changes everything. The low alarm buzzed through the underground base. Commander Reeves' voice came over the speakers. We have incoming. Ethan and Zira exchanged glances. They both knew who it was. Vrax, the last loose end. The command center was filled with tension as the large holographic display flickered to life. There, standing in a silent void of stars, was Vrax. His armor was cracked, scorched from battle. His red eyes no longer burned with the same confidence. And yet, he still stood tall. You defied the council, Vrax said, his voice deep and steady. And they chose to leave you alive. Zira nodded. The war is over, Vrax. It's time for you to stand down. Vrax tilted his head slightly. You misunderstand. The council has abandoned Earth, but I have not. The room went silent. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. What does that mean? Vrax's red eyes locked onto Zira. You are a traitor. The words cut through the air like a blade. Zira took a deep breath. I made a choice. Vrax remained still. You betrayed your own people. For what? For him. Asterisk, asterisk. His gaze shifted to Ethan, asterisk, asterisk. Ethan felt a strange chill crawl up his spine. Zira didn't answer right away. Then, she took a step forward. For something greater. For the first time, Vrax's expression shifted, just slightly. Something between disbelief and pain. You are the strongest of us, Vrax said quietly. And now, you are nothing. Zira exhaled. No, Vrax. Now I am free. Vrax remained silent for a long moment. Then, his armor hummed with energy. He was preparing for battle. Zira stepped forward again. "You don't have to do this." Vrax did not move. "You were my sister." The words hung in the air like a final farewell. And then he attacked. The final battle. The entire underground base shook as Vrax's energy blast collided with Zira's shield. Sparks ripped through the air, metal groaned, and alarm screamed. Ethan stumbled backward, shielding his face. Zira held her ground, her hands glowing as she absorbed the impact. Vrax charged. His punch cracked the air like a sonic boom. Zira dodged at the last second, flipping backward onto a raised platform. The fight was blindingly fast, a flurry of strikes, counter-strikes, energy bursts, and raw power. But something was different. Zira wasn't fighting to win. She was fighting to stop him. And Vrax, he was fighting to end her. Ethan's heart pounded. He had never felt so powerless. Then, he saw it. Vrax was faster, stronger, but Zira had something he didn't. She understood something he never could. "Vrax, stop," she shouted. Vrax didn't listen. Zira gritted her teeth. Then, instead of dodging, she did something no one expected. She lowered her defense. Vrax's fist, glowing with raw energy, slammed into her chest. Ethan felt his heart stop. Zira staggered. Blood dripped from her mouth. Vrax froze. For the first time, he hesitated. "Why?" he whispered. Zira looked up at him, smiling softly. "Because I still believe in you." Vrax took a step back. His red eyes flickered. Then, slowly, the glow faded. The room was silent. And for the first time, Vrax looked lost. The final choice. Vrax turned to Ethan. "This is what you fight for." Ethan met his gaze. "Yeah." Vrax took a long breath. Then, finally, he dropped his weapon. The war was over. For real, this time. Epilogue. A new beginning. The next few days were a blur. The Council never returned. The Dominion ceased all activity on Earth. And Ethan, he had survived. But something felt different now. He wasn't just some guy fixing computers anymore. He had fought for something. For someone. And as he stood on a rooftop, watching the first sunrise after the war, Zira stood beside him. Ethan smirked. "So, what now?" Zira tilted her head. "That is the beauty of humanity. You never know." Ethan chuckled. "You're starting to sound human." Zira looked at him. And then she smiled. For real, this time.